I'm Adrian Pratt, and this is Calcutta, Adda. I've been looking forward to this conversation with Paul Walsh for a long time now. It's a great story, and I'm sure you're going to love it. Paul moved to Calcutta in about 2002 as a British diplomat and promptly fell in love with the city. While there, he and a bunch of friends started playing rugby on the Maidan and formed a club called the Jungle Crows. Over time, he and they began working with impoverished children, trying to teach them life lessons through rugby. And when the time came for Paul to move on to his next diplomatic post, he was faced with a real dilemma. He loved Calcutta, he loved working with the kids, he loved rugby, but his career beckoned. In the end, he made the very difficult and improbable decision to quit the Foreign Service and focus on the Jungle Crows and the good work he was doing. In 2007, he met a group of kids in Odisha and taught them how to play rugby. In a matter of 4 months, they trained up and took part in a junior Rugby World Cup tournament in England. The amazing story behind those kids and that endeavour was made into a Lionsgate film a couple of years ago called Jungle Cry. I'll be talking to Paul about that film, yes, but to me, the more amazing part of the story of Paul and the Jungle Crows is the amazing impact it's had on hundreds of kids. During my time in Calcutta, I came across a number of alumni, I guess you'd call them, from the club, who told me about the businesses they'd started, the jobs that they'd had, and I met some of the the kids who were in a leadership position at the Jungle Crows, and was always impressed by their drive, their leadership, their joy of rugby, and their eternal quest for self-improvement and for knowledge. It was an amazing group of kids to be around. I finally tracked down Paul, and he has agreed to discuss these and other things with me. I hope you love this story as much as I do. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Good, good. How are you? How are you? How's life?
Oh, I'm doing great, thank you. It's lovely to see you, and I really appreciate you taking some time to speak with me. I know you just came back from a rugby tournament in Odisha, and that the girls won and the boys came in third. So
Yeah,
it's nice of you to be able to take a little bit of time to chat with me.
yeah. It was great. It was great weekend. A lot of success. So we're very happy with it all.
Brilliant. Well, listen, if we can just sort of start at the beginning. I believe you moved to Kolkata in 2002 or something, and you're still there. So tell me, at what moment did you realize that the city might change your life?
Yeah, I'm still here. And I suppose the thing about it is, it was never some great moment in life. There was never some great thing that happened to me. I had this kind of, there was never a shining light that woke me up in the morning. It just sort of slowly crept up on me. When I came here as a British diplomat, I was posted here. It was my top choice. I wanted to come here. I absolutely wanted to come here.
Me
But
too.
really more because of the job. It was a small post. It meant that you had lots of responsibility. You kind of didn't, lots of different things, aspects of the job. So I was excited about that. And I was thinking about my career and what would be good experience for it. Um, and so yeah, I came. And at the time, people were saying, "Oh, it's really good to have a career break." We're getting these messages from the HR people. "Oh, everybody should have different experiences, try different things." So I thought, okay, I'll try something different. I'll try and live in Calcutta, work for this little NGO, which was called Future Hope, and see how that works out. And I might do that for 2 years, 3 years at the most, 2 or 3 years. And I said to all my family, 2, 3 years. I said to my work, 2, 3 years. And they were like, okay, give it a go, give it a go. And so I did it, and 20 years later, I'm still doing it.
So, obviously, you've had a very multi-layered life, but one of the main leitmotifs is rugby. And I believe this adventure of yours sort of got started with a group of buddies and the Maidan, tossing a ball around and forming a rugby club. I think that's a picture of the Maidan and Crowfield
Yeah.
behind you. But tell us how it all got started.
So, you come to Calcutta, and if you're interested in sport, one of the first things, and if you're interested in the arts, you find out about the arts, and it's got so many things going on that people don't necessarily know about. So it can take you a little bit of time to understand them and get into them. But the first day I arrived, I was driving from the airport, and we were involved in an incident in the car. There was some brick thrown across the road, and there was a bit of chaos. But just before that, we drove past Salt Lake Stadium. And I said to the driver, I said, "Oh, what's this stadium? Is this Eden Gardens?" Because I wasn't, it's early in the morning, just got off a flight from the UK. And he goes, "No, this is Salt Lake Stadium, football stadium, 90,000 people." And, it got me thinking, my God, I'd sort of obviously researched Calcutta, um, but I didn't understand the football, for example. And as you stay longer and you meet people, you talk about sport, and then you discover this kind of rugby culture here, based around this club, CCFC, based around what was then Future Hope rugby team, and just started going to watch that rugby, and really was inspired by these kind of, especially the Future Hope kids who were like young street kids. They played without any fear, and so we've drunkenly, it has to be said, in a bar one evening, me and the two guys I worked with, John and Gary, we said, "Oh, there's a rugby sevens tournament coming up, and three less rugby sevens players you have never met." Um, so, for people who are watching, rugby sevens players are normally fit, athletic, fast, and I've never been any of those. I can't even pretend that once upon a time I was. Um, we thought, let's have a go. Let's have a go. We'll enter. And so we started training. We had a group of drivers in the office, group of security guards, a few of the different staff. And of course, if you know where the British High Commission is, it's just a short walk over the road to the Maidan. And that's exactly where we started training, just on that little patch of Maidan, just opposite the office. And we'd clear off out of the office at like 4 o'clock, throw a rugby ball around for an hour, go back in, turn the computer off, pretending we'd been there all the time. Um, as you do, as nobody will ever admit to. Um, and then, went home and went about our way. So then we entered that rugby tournament. And John was Scottish. Gary was a very strict Englishman. And I have this Irish blood. So I picked we had enough players to have two teams. Can you imagine, in this sevens tournament? And so one of the teams wore green shirts because I'd got those shirts because of my Irish connection. Traditionally, the Ireland team playing green. John had got blue shirts, so his kind of team played in blue shirts for Scotland. And we said, and we'd got this name, we'd already come up with this name, the Jungle Crows. So we entered the team, two Jungle Crows teams. And I'm happy to say that my mate, a friend who was living here at the time, he was supposed to be the scrum half, but he'd had a late Saturday night. So my debut, never expecting to make a debut, was as a scrum half in a rugby sevens game at CCFC in the middle of the monsoon. And so, I stand in the middle of the field, and in those days that field was very muddy, and the mud and the water kind of come above my shoes, come above my ankles, and I try and run in it, and it's very slow going. And then these Future Oak kids, we were watching them play, and they seemed to like hover over the mud. They had some sort of superpower skills that made them like just float over the mud, whereas you can imagine, sort of sploshing and splashing. Anyway, can you imagine? We've played our first game against a CCFC team. They'd had a later night even than us, and we won. And so, really, that moment, the kind of my perhaps passion, a lot of people would say it's an obsession, with this kind of Jungle Crows and with the rugby was born. And it all started in a muddy field in Calcutta. Unbelievable, really.
That's wonderful. And then how did the club evolve to involve local youngsters, some of whom,
So you
came from pretty troubled backgrounds, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you can imagine that you're practicing rugby on the Maidan. The Maidan, and everybody who knows the Maidan, it's not the sort of place that, middle class, regular people, they don't sort of, they go round it, across it, but they don't sort of go out into it. Um,
And
so we'd be
it's a
practicing.
huge space, right? I believe it's the largest urban green space in all of Asia, right?
It must be yeah, it's huge and it's kind of, and I love it. I mean, it's like people have their passions about Calcutta, and for some, everybody has a different thing that they love. And the thing that I absolutely love and think is incredibly special is the Maidan. It's a beautiful place. And it's got so much wildlife in it. It's constantly abused by, for rallies and for people playing, and all of us who want to use it for its kind of, use its facilities. Um, but it's so as a place, it's resilient, it's beautiful, it's green, it's the real heart. I think it's the real heart of the city. It's a different kind of place and I love it. So that's just an aside. um but a lot of the people who go there, especially in the late afternoon, some youngster walks by, that generally means that they're probably whacking what we call playing truant or whatever you call that from school quite often. So,
Mm.
it's a renowned place for that. If you don't feel like going to school, you go and hang around the Maidan. You watch people playing cricket. You can go and have a little ride on a horse. You can hang around and meet all other sort of ne'er-do-wells who sort of hang around the place. Um, and so these kids would come along and they'd say, "Oh, what are you doing? What is this game? What's it all about?" And you'd say, "Come on, you want to join in? Join in, no problem. Come and play with us." And so more and more youngsters, young people, got involved that way, and that's really how it kind of went from being me, John, Gary, security guards, drivers, few sort of expat friends, Chef Sean,
Mhm.
who kind of like, were I'd forced them to come out and play and train, and it went from that to these kind of youngsters who, and you get and I suppose what happened was we got more and more involved in their lives. So that you'd say, "Oh, why are you not at school?" "Oh, didn't want to go." And then perhaps they'd come and say, "Can you help me with something? Something's happened at home. Can you help me with this?" So more and more we got involved in those young people's lives, and I suppose that's where the story of the kind of the social element, the kind of that element to the rugby club started, just by young boys, mainly young men, who were perhaps not in the best place. Were not necessarily in poverty, but were just kind of like lost.
Mm.
um, and I think a lot of us can sort of relate to that. We've not everybody has had that vision and that target their whole lives. It can take you time to understand where you want to be, where you want to go. And I think that's one of the things that we've kind of always done with the club, is that it's always about tried to be very welcoming. Anybody's welcome. If you've got a problem or you've got an issue, then we'll try and solve it. But understanding that we can't solve everything, but we'll give it a go to kind of help anybody really, and that's where it all started.
And just as an aside, I mean, one of the most amazing um, parts of my life in Kolkata was bumping into Jungle Crows players, especially the ones that had sort of risen and were sort of in a position of leadership with the Jungle Crows, because they were so aspirational. They always were trying to better their own lives, but they were also completely inspirational because they took the younger kids under their wings and sort of have taken on the role that you were just describing that you started with. They're helping the younger kids now. They're leading by example, and it's a really, really moving group of people, boys and girls now, to be around.
Yeah,
But
it's really developed in that way that, especially since I'm a lazy bugger, I want them to do the coaching, them to do everything, and I can then just sit and enjoy what's going
It,
on.
it's
So
funny you say that because my first interaction with the Jungle Cruise, I mean, I told you as soon as I came to Calcutta, somebody said you have to meet Paul, and so that became a sort of quest. But like a month after I got there, there was a girls' sevens tournament, at the Maidan, and I thought, right, for sure, Paul's going to be there. I'm going to meet him there. But this entire tournament was organized by the girls for the girls. They organized everything, getting doctors there, the scheduling, the awards. They asked VIPs to come there and give speeches. And yeah, I mean, you lazy bugger were nowhere to be seen. But these girls did everything, and so they'd obviously been instilled in, leadership skills and all those sorts of things that are needed. It was just really, really impressive. I want to get back to this, but in the introduction, I talked a little bit about Jungle Cry, and
Oh, yes.
um, that was a movie that took place about a bunch of young kids in Odisha. And how did that come about? I mean, you're in Calcutta. Odisha is a good long ways away. How did that chapter in your life and their life get going?
So the story begins in kind of 2005, 2006. So Jungle Crows, we started the club in 2004. And I was, mad keen on everything. And I was always reading about different rugby things. And I read about this organization called Tour Aid, who organize these kind of rugby tours for kids, disadvantaged kids from around the world. And so I pinged an email off to a guy called Andy, who became a great friend, and he's a great guy, and said, what about a team from India? And I think it took me about 3 or 4 emails to get a reply, because he obviously received this email. This Indian guy, this guy in India, he wants to bring a team here. I think he's a bit mad. Um, you know, and so I kept sending him an email, and so they'd had a team, they'd had some, they'd had individual teams come over. So they'd had a team from South Africa, a team from Romania, these, that not everybody would know, but they're kind of rugby playing nations. Um, and eventually they decided to do this World Cup, got christened as a World Cup, um, of disadvantaged kids from different countries to come and play this tournament in England. And we got invited. So we got this invitation, going to take place in London. And so I thought, right, okay, now I need to make a team. And of course, what you realize immediately is all the kids that we'd been working with who would qualify for this tournament, we couldn't get any of them a passport. So, getting a passport, you need a birth certificate, your parents need to have birth certificates, your life has to be sort of regular and kind of within the normal system. And all the kids that we'd been working with, none of them had any documentation. So suddenly I'd got this invitation, this really exciting invitation, but basically none of the kids that I'd worked with over the years, none of them could get a passport to go and play in this tournament.
Wow.
And so I kind of like, don't know, we'd had some people who come and play tag rugby in India, and they'd come and play tag rugby in Calcutta and gone and played tag rugby in Bhubaneswar. So I was thinking they went to this school, KISS. They played, they had a great time there. What about, I wonder if they can get passports. So I didn't make phone calls because these things can't happen over phone calls. I went to visit them, and I'd visited there before. I'd been to the school as a diplomat. I'd visited the school, and there's this Klinga Institute of Social Sciences. It was a school of like 1,200 children at the time. I think 1,200 children. It is now a school and university of 40,000.
That's amazing.
So it's kind of
Really.
grown a little bit. Um, so I went there, met the founder of it, met the CEO of the school, and basically said, look, this won't cost you anything, but can you get your children passports? These children were supposed to be 13, 12, 13. And they were like, yeah, not a problem. It's just it's the kids are all tribal kids. So anyway, the long story that I can use up the whole hour on this story, but we put this team together from KISS school. We trained them up. None of them had ever played rugby before. We spent 6 months, I suppose, 4 5 months, 6 months, training them. A little guy called who was like my two sort of right hand men, Tudu and Sanjay. Basically, they went backwards and forwards. I went a few times. There's still some more photographs of us kind of sleeping at stations and getting tired and going there and training these kids over a few days and then coming back. And we started, it's that classic. We started with 100 kids throwing a rugby ball around. We picked the best 20, then we picked the best 12, and we flew off to the UK. Um, and the first round of matches was played in Esher Rugby Club, which is sort of southwest London.
Mhm.
And it was kind of cold, a little bit cold, bit of, that sort of drizzle in the air. And we were on the sort of back pitch. South Africa were on the front pitch and we were in the back, and we played our first game. And I can't even exactly remember the schedule, but it was something like we played Swaziland and we beat them. Then we played somebody else and we beat them. And nobody was really watching. And then our third win, we won. The fourth game, we won. And then suddenly there's like five or six, sort of the coaches were all sort of going, "Who are these guys?" kind of
Right.
thing. Where have they come from? India, you sure? India? Yeah, we're from India. Yeah, we're from India. And by the end of the day, of the sort of preliminary rounds day, we'd qualify. So it was basically a preliminary tournament, lots of matches, and we were in the semi-final. So we played a semi-final and won it, and nobody could believe it. Everybody was like, "What the heck?" And it wasn't like we'd brought big guys. We just had these 12 guys, and they were all sort of fast. They were agile. They all played really fun, fast rugby, and really nobody could keep up with them. And so this is the kind of kicker to the story, and the charity that organised it. So we then played. The final was held at Richmond Rugby Club. Richmond, London Scottish, West London, very quite a prestigious club, and it was played before a London Scottish home match. So there's a full crowd in the stand, and they're all thinking. And so that charity flew in Chester Williams, who I subsequently became a very good friend of, and has passed away very sadly. And he was flown in by the organisers to hand over the trophy. And we were playing South Africa in the final. He's a South African, first black South African rugby player, played in the Rugby World Cup famously for the when they won the World Cup. Um, so who did everybody think was going to win this tournament? Obviously, they flew in Chester Williams, who, you know, they was expecting South Africa to win this
Right.
tournament. And we went behind, and they were quite big and they'd played rugby a bit. But we just beat them. We scored, I think it was 3 tries to 1 in the end. And we had a few friends in the crowd, everybody, jumping around, it was great. And it was absolutely fantastic. And the reason I suppose it's become a sort of film and a story is that the people at KISS, Dr. Samantha, he was the founder of KISS, and he realized that there was a power in this win. And I didn't realize. I just was like this guy who organized it, sent the kids, went there with them, had a great time. Kids come back, wasn't that fun? But he had that vision to sort of see there was a power in what had happened. There was a kind of something beyond what any the rest of us really
Mhm.
understood had happened. And so when they came, they went to meet the chief minister. They so the movie isn't quite, obviously the movie is based on the true story,
Right.
because in the movie as well, we lose a game. We never lost a game. Come on.
Hey.
What are you talking about? There was no chance we were ever going to lose a game. But he organized, they got a letter came from the president of India. The chief minister met them. He organized, they did a sort of trip around the city on the back of a flat truck.
Wonderful.
Um, all the kids were there, and he made this kind of story out of what they'd achieved. And in a way, I think it's probably where the resurgence, the sort of sporting kind of story of Orissa, which has got this incredible sporting story now, it's got these incredible facilities, these incredible athletes are coming from Orissa. We just spend a week in the Kalinga Stadium, which when back then was not a very nice place. But that sporting story of Orissa with hockey, with track and field, has really, it's probably one of its kind of genesises was that moment,
That's
and this Dr.
amazing.
Samantha.
I was going to ask you, whether you still keep in touch with any of those players, but then coincidentally, you sent me the picture yesterday. You bumped into not only Ganesh, who was in the movie at least one of the stars, but also the guy who played him in the movie.
Yeah,
So,
Subrato.
so tell me about that, and tell me about what sort of lasting impact that tournament had on these kids, particular. But
So I still see many of them. This weekend, last week, the coach of the KISS team is one of them. The player in one of the players still plays for KISS. Um, so just tell you one of the stories of these children. So the KISS team went in 2007, won this World Cup, and one of them, Ganesh, he was like the 12th guy. We weren't sure about whether we were going to pick him, but we went for him. Very good player. And then so turns out that now I'm not sure exactly when, 4 or 5 years ago, he married the daughter of the president of India.
wow,
So that the photograph that I sent you is me standing with him, Ganesh, and the Subrato who played him in the film in Rashtrapati Bhavan, which is the home of the president of India, and is
wow,
where he lives. And if you look at the president on
he
her
lives
tours,
there.
yeah, he'll sometimes be like with her because he goes round now and again with her on those tours. And so I was visiting Delhi. Subrato is living in Delhi now. He works in Decathlon in Delhi. So we said, okay, let's go and meet Subrato, let's go and meet Ganesh. And he organized for us to have a pass. I had some other visitors with me at the time. So he got us the pass. We drove in. He came to the gate and met us. And it was so I mean, it's brilliant. It was fantastic because we went into like a little room, had tea and coffee, and the president and there's this kind of thing. Oh, you can't meet my mother-in-law because she's a bit busy today. And it's like, that's okay. We don't need to meet the president this time. And he said, but you come back and stay here because then you can meet her. You know, so that was just amazing to see where he's got to. And of course, as he's walking, and it's so funny because as he's walking around the showing us the Rashtrapati Bhavan, which is beautiful. I mean, it's incredible. All the sort of security and the guards, they all stand up, and he's like this kid who I've known, and so he's like, and you can see he's like, and I said, "Oh, what's the best thing about being here, Ganesh?" And he goes, "Sir, it's too boring." Because of course he's not really allowed out. So
Right.
he's like, if he goes out, he wants to do anything, he has to kind of be given permission. So he's kind of like his movements are restricted. And of course he's grown up in, village and with absolute freedom.
Right.
But so funny to see, really nice to see.
That's
And
wonderful. Well,
Shimoto, who plays him in the film, he's one of our Jungle Crows. So the great thing about Jungle Cry, the movie, is it's about this team that obviously we coached and we took to the UK, but all the actors who play the team are from either Kiss or from Jungle Crows.
oh, I
So
didn't realize
Shiroto
that.
was a Jungle Crows boy, and it was the thing that I said. So many times I told the story to quite a few filmmakers. One time I got flown to Bombay by Disney, and for this story, and I'm in a room. There's me and like 10 executives near Mumbai Airport, some office. And I said, what would we sort of get from this film? What will be, I was thinking, are we going to make some money out of this? And they all looked at each other and they said, Disney are going to make a film about you. And I thought that's not going to pay any bills though, is it? Anyway, they never made the film.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it was just and it was great that and I said, well, the one thing I said to the people who made this Jungle Cry was that I really wanted the action to be authentic and good. And so they hired a director from the USA, a sports director who's done Chak Day India, who's done several of the cricket films. So he's like a specialist in sports direction. And I did a lot of the sort of some of the choreography for the rugby scenes, to make it, because I don't know if if you Google sort of rugby India Bollywood, there's some kind of a few crazy depictions of rugby in Bollywood and South Indian films.
Right. Well, the rugby scenes in the movie were really, really very good. Listen, earlier we talked about um, some of the, to me, really impressive young folks who are part of Jungle Crows. We talked a little bit now about Ganesh, but you introduced me to some of the kids who've moved on. One of them whom started his own gym, I believe, in Bangalore, and met lots of other people who've just got really good jobs. And can you talk a little bit about the lasting impact that Jungle Crows has had, and how did that come about? I mean, you're not a counselor, you're not somebody who is trained in how to inspire or to teach life skills to young kids. So how did that come about, and tell me some of the lasting impacts.
So I think I don't have those skills, and I'm not necessarily very good at it, but I suppose it's the passion for the game and the passion. We just tried to translate that passion into something that would be really powerful for the youngsters as well. And these are, and I think we've always, everybody gets a chance, everybody gets a second chance, everybody really gets a third chance, a fourth chance. We became this kind of place where you could always find a way of figuring out something for a young person. And I think that's great because, I see it in myself when I was young that I needed to have those chances to have a go at something, and perhaps it didn't work, but I'd be able to get back and try again. And I think that's what we provided, is this sort of security. And when you show, I think when you give a trust to a young person, when you give that kind of responsibility to them, and there has to be some safeguards. You can't just say, go and climb a hill, or there has to be some safeguards. If you're organising a rugby tournament, then we have to think about the health, the safety. And it's not that we ignore those things, but it's like saying to a young person, well, and really we have this program called Keller Rugby, which is the big thing now, really. And that was started because I think it'd be the guy you were talking about mentioned, Zafar, who went to live in Bangalore, who is now lives in Holland, is married to a French girl, has two young children, um, is visited here last winter, um, who I stay in touch with very closely. And he came to me one day and he said, he'd been hired by an NGO to do a project in a sort of slum area of Calcutta. And he said, this project's been really interesting. I've met all these really interesting children, and the project is ending. And what do we do? How can you help me do something else for these kids? How can we carry something on? And I was like, well, I haven't got a clue. Why don't you teach them rugby? That's what we do. That's the thing that we know. So let's teach them rugby. And it's a place called Brooklyn. It's like not a place that people would go to. Um, and we started just on a little patch of ground, pretty rough area, just playing touch rugby. Yeah, obviously no tackle rugby, nothing like that, but just playing rugby. And then, sitting after the rugby and just talking to the children. Because the other thing I feel is that, when you can talk about a problem, doesn't can't necessarily be solved, but for a young person who is perhaps in a in a kind of in difficult, challenging circumstances, let's say, often having the chance to talk about an issue, talk about a problem that they may be facing, with their peers, with somebody who's interested, a bit older than them, has some experience, and not sort of saying, "Oh, this is how you can solve it. You must do this." Not having that kind of attitude, but just having an attitude where you'll listen. Those kind of things of the sort of the best skills around counselling. That you listen, you engage with a young person, with a person, that can be very powerful just in itself. I think that too often as adults, especially as adults, we want to tell a child what they should do, how they should do something. We can't help ourselves. And I see it all the time in myself, and I see it in other people, that you sort of see, that's not how I'd have done it. That's not how I'd have done it. Why are you doing it that way? And if you can just hold yourself back from that, um, and just give a young person the chance to find their feet, to kind of deliver something that they've perhaps never done before, to give them that kind of opportunity, then they thrive in that sort of an
Mm,
environment. They thrive. And of course, again, not everybody does so well. But then if everybody rises with everybody else. And Zafar was an example of that. He he was not, he's a bit of a troubled young adolescent, let's say. Um, but he embraced the idea of rugby. He embraced the idea of using rugby to support and help young people. Um, and he sort of, lifted everybody around him, everybody he came into contact with, because he had that passion,
Right.
he had that drive and enthusiasm. And I think so that's the power of it. It's this kind of, it's the power of everybody's passion, wanting to do well for the rugby, but also more in a way is wanting to do well for the youngsters that play and are with us.
Right. So, following up on that, have you seen changes in gender participation or community attitudes because of rugby programs?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, we've got another visitor. Uh, it's
Open
like
House
those,
of
it's like
Balls,
those,
eh?
it's like those outtakes on Zoom videos. I'm doing them all. Um, so um, yeah. So when we started, it was men, and India only played men's rugby. And then in the lead up to the Commonwealth Games, India consciously said, right, we've got to get the girls playing, we've got to get women playing. And a bit of investment came in from World Rugby leading up to the 2010 Commonwealth Games. So we started a women's team. We partnered with the Sports Authority of India in Calcutta and started a women's team. And they did brilliantly. But then that sort of investment fizzled out. But we got that bug to make sure that, and the Kello, the kind of in the community rugby, was always boys and girls. We'd never sort of said, oh, it's only for boys, it's only for girls. We'd never done that. So yeah, then we started different programs for girls, and it's much more challenging for a young girl to play. But they are so, they're just much more, they're smarter, aren't they? I mean, you know, they are. And it's just difficult, especially compared to adolescent boys. They just got their much more of their wits about them, and they just get things done. They organize themselves better. They organize each other better. They organize me better. So they so the girls, in India, as an India national game, as India team, the women perform much better than the men, and that's because in Asia less. It's partly because like less countries necessarily have a developed women's program, but we have a really good women's program here. We were very lucky to be in it at the very start, so a lot of our girls got great opportunities. Some of them went to France to play. Some of them went, played for India. There was times when we'd have perhaps 6, 7 of the India, the 12-man 7 squad. 6, 7 of them would be from Jungle Crows,
Yeah.
and everybody's caught up now, and a lot of places have gone past us, and so we're always trying to get back to where we were. But it's the sort of growth of women's rugby in India is an incredible thing, and I think the growth of women's sport in India is an incredible thing, and in a way, it's much more exciting. It's got more opportunities than the men's game.
You invited me to an India-Nepal rugby game, and I forget the name of the stadium, but it was essentially full of Kello kids, Jungle Crows, a whole community of, very young to sort of 20-year-olds who'd all grown up around rugby, around the sort of the spirit of the game. It must be, I mean, there must be thousands of kids who feel like they belong to their own community that has been created by rugby.
It's great, and when I'm driving around, inevitably somebody will bang on the windscreen next to me, bang on the window and say, Paul, sir, how are you? And I'll look a bit blank, and they'll go, I'm from Kidapur. And I'll go, oh, yeah, yeah. So it's great. It's great to have that. I can go into like a lot of slums and I'll get mobbed by kids. So it's great. That's great. And it's that thing, it's sort of generational. The older kids look after the smaller ones. And
Right.
our academy on a Saturday morning on the Maidan, Crowfield, that's what that's all about. The older kids will bring the smaller kids. We have this winter camp each year. And
Which is
this year,
amazing. My son and I took part a couple of days there, and it's just hundreds of kids just running around, being sort of exhausted by the teenagers who are training them and teaching them the basics of rugby. An amazing sight.
It's just like this. It's this, and everybody's excited for it. And 2 months before it happens, everybody's building up for it. Older kids are saying, "Am I going to be a coach this year? Am I going to be a coach?" And they'll get that chance to be a coach, organize some aspect of it. And again, it's that kind of live learning. So although we have to set some ground rules, we need to make sure everything's done safely. The whole thing is done by those children from the communities. So the older children from the
Right,
communities,
right.
they organise the children to come from their communities. Somebody will be responsible for the transport. Somebody will be responsible for breakfast each morning. Somebody will be responsible for taking the attendance. Another group of children will be responsible for what the activities are, slightly funner activities for the smaller kids, fun and rugby for the older kids, then rugby on the other side of the field for the older kids. And it's like this kind of amazing thing with
Right.
perhaps 100 plus what we young coaches who are delivering every day, 10 mornings, 9 mornings we did this year. Before COVID, we'd have like over 1,000 children every day, and we had to sort of COVID saved our lives because we couldn't carry that on. So now we have about 400 children each morning. But on this year, and we'll probably do this again next year, on December 31st, New Year's Eve, we had I think it was 1,100 kids come. So everybody sort of came back. Great fun, and great fun for those small kids, but an incredible experience, learning experience, motivating experience, because that when you get the youngsters are motivated, they have some direction, they have some kind of leadership from older kids again. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it really is. Just to go back, I mean, the India Nepal game that you invited me to, I believe five of the Indian players were alumni from the Jungle Crows, and they thrashed Nepal, I believe, 86-0 at the time. Not to soil the sort of inspirational conversation that we're having with Money Talk, but I would imagine funding and logistics must have been constant challenges for you. How how did you keep the project alive over all these years?
So it's yeah, it's a challenge, and it's nobody people don't always kind of get it. You have to find people who've got a very that share your vision. So it's trying to explain what the idea is, the concept, which at times can seem a bit loose and a bit woolly. People like to fund things where you're going to feed perhaps one child. Each meal costs this much. I'm paying for this. I can see exactly what's being delivered. Good, great, fine. Um, so it's just trying to find those people. And after COVID, we've now the Jungle Crows has kind of like taken a backseat as a brand or a name. The spirit of it still lives on. And we merged the kind of Keller Rugby program, Jungle Crows, with Future Hope
Sure.
because of partly for that reason. They're a bigger organization. They have more expertise in terms of fundraising, in terms of educational support. We're able to deliver much more in terms of support for a young kid who's at school or going to college, more scholarships, because that's really where the sort of charitable aspect of it is about education. It's about giving that kid an opportunity to, whose parents have perhaps never hardly been to school. And then they start playing rugby. And that rugby gives them an opportunity to finish their class 10, finish their class 12, perhaps do a skills training or go to university, which is just unheard of for most of them.
Yeah.
And, and they struggle. I've we have a coordinator of the college scholarships in Future Hope, who is when she comes in the office, we all cringe, uh, because we know we're going to be in trouble because somebody will have missed an exam or somebody will have not done their assignments. So we have we need that discipline, and we've now got that discipline. We kind of winged it for 20 years. um and now I'm like under the stick a bit, so
Sure.
which is a good thing, obviously. It's like can't wing it forever.
So we're sort of about to wind it down, but just a couple more questions. This series is called Calcutta Adda, so it's about the city of joy. Can you share a very Calcutta moment from the Jungle Crow's journey that captures the spirit of the city for you?
Oh, there's a question. A Jungle Cruise moment, a moment from the city. I mean, my city love, if you like, is not really a moment. It's a place, and it's the Maidan. I kind of like. I'm always having moments, good moments, bad moments. You live in a city with so many people. Your moments are like every day. Uh, so, um, uh, but I love the spirit. I don't, I think it's perhaps an overused word. But that I love being on the Maidan. I love seeing the kids doing well. I love then perhaps when they've all dispersed and gone their separate ways, then I can have a quick beer in the Rangers on the Maidan. And even better if there's a cricket match at Eden Gardens and I can sit in the garden of the Rangers and listen to the cricket match and watch it on the television in the bar without being crushed by 60,000 people.
Yeah, I you took me to the Rangers Club once. Obviously, I loved it because my team is the Glasgow Rangers, and it has nothing to do with
Absolutely.
that, unfortunately. But the Maidan is a very special place. All those pop-up clubs around it, that's unique. Crowfield in the middle of it is unique. All those sort of ad hoc cricket games in the middle of it are unique. The wedding photographers are unique. People riding in there are unique. I mean, it's just it truly is a place like no other in the world. And I think the Jungle Crows have really added a new and fabulous chapter to it. So I just want to thank you so much, Paul, for your time, for everything you've done. I watched Jungle Cry a couple of times over the weekend before this conversation. I mean, I know some of it was a bit Bollywoodized, Hollywoodized,
And,
but
and did you see me in it?
I did not.
That means you didn't watch it to the end. I'm in it at the very end. Ah, I've caught you out there.
So after the credits,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
oh dang. Well, okay, now watch it for the third time now.
Fast, fast forward.
I will do. But hey, thanks for everything. Thanks for your friendship. Thanks for what you do with these kids. And I'm hoping to be back in Calcutta very soon to catch up
Yeah,
on another beer with you at the Rangers Club.
absolutely. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it very much. Thank you
Thank
ever
you.
so much for including me in your series.
You're welcome. Have a great day, Paul. Bye.
Cheers.